Hi guys, Sean Hess here with Hess Motorsports, here to do the installation video of one of our newest products, the steering quickener for the Can-Am Maverick X3. This here is something we're excited to release. We've had a lot of inquiries about it, and we're excited to bring it out to you. This particular unit is a 1.5 to 1, which is the only ratio we'll be offering for this unit as of this time, simply because Can-Am made the rack from factory faster or quicker, so it doesn't need quite as much ratio to achieve the same thing. So right now we're going to install this 1.5 to 1 quickener. What you're going to expect to get when you get it out of the box, just to kind of give you an idea, you're going to have a steering shaft that has a double U-joint on it. One U-joint will go to our quickener, the other one will go direct onto your factory power steering unit. Of course, obviously you're going to get the quickener itself, the housing. Depending upon how you order it on the website, this particular one we're installing is set up for our quick release shaft, quick release steering coupler, which has the quick release shaft on it, and it's made so that our quick release can go directly onto the shaft without an adapter. One of the other ways you can order it is for the OEM steering wheel, so it won't have quite this shaft. It'll be a little bit different, and it'll allow you to use your factory steering wheel should you choose to upgrade that later or however you want to do it. But here's the main housing, the main unit. Here's the shaft itself. So that's how you'll be ordering it. If you order the quick release with it, we've already got this bolted to the steering wheel, but you'll see the quick release coupler and it goes straight on to the unit and locks on like that. So here you go. We're going to be doing the install right now, and just go over a few of the tools you're going to need. Depending upon how you do this, if you're doing it with a stock steering wheel, you're going to need to remove your OEM steering wheel, which you won't have to do for the application we're doing, but if you were, you're going to need a little small screwdriver. You're going to need a 24mm socket and some type of puller or an extra set of hands that you can use a board and a hammer to knock your factory steering wheel off. Like I said though, this application we will not be doing that. So all we're going to need is a 13mm socket and a 10mm socket, a 13mm wrench, a 3mm Allen wrench, 1/4 inch ratchet, and I've got me a 1/4 inch impact gun with a 30mm a T30 Torx on there. So those are the things you're going to need to do the install that we're doing. So once you've got your tools together for the build, if you're going to keep the stock steering wheel, now's a good time to remove it. So you'll want to take your screwdriver and pop this cap off and reveal the 24mm nut that's behind there. You'll remove the nut, and then you're going to take a board and a hammer or a puller and get somebody to help you drive this off, or some of them you can actually just jerk real hard and get them off. But it's always good to have an extra set of hands. Just pull on it and tap it with a hammer and a board, works really well. Or you can even do the a ratchet strap to the cage and get some tension on it and do it yourself, works pretty well. But for this particular application, we're not going to be removing the OEM steering wheel. We're actually going to take this whole thing out as an assembly, and you can set it aside if you ever need to go back together with it or anything like that, or put it back stock to sell your car, whatever you want to do, you'll be able to do it. Because our new setup replaces all of this, and including the steering shaft. So you'll be able to just change it all the way in and out as need be. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to take the steering shaft loose from the power steering unit. So it's good to keep the steering wheel on for this particular step so you can turn to get access to the bolt down there. And that bolt is a 13mm nut and head, and we'll be moving the steering wheel so that we can get that loose and removing that. Okay, so I've got my 13mm socket and I've got my 13mm wrench, and what I'm trying to do, there's a bolt that goes to the U-joint on the power steering unit down here. And what works best is to kind of turn it to the right, and it'll expose the nut through this cavity right here. And you can reach in here with your 13mm wrench through this area here and get on the head of the bolt from this side. And then that'll allow you to come in on this other side with your ratchet. Or if you have a cordless impact, you can do that too. But that'll allow us to remove this nut and bolt from here. Oop, there you go, be careful so you don't drop that. Okay, and that'll allow us to get the nut out of the U-joint. And there's your 13 millimeter nut and bolt that comes out of there. Now, one thing you're gonna wanna take note of is the orientation of your steering. So what I like to do is turn the steering wheel back square so you know that 12 o'clock is straight up. That way it makes it easier installing your new one, because you have to orientate your steering quickener shaft so that 12 o'clock is straight up as well. So I orientated it back. Now what we're going to do is we're going to actually take the bolts out of the instrument cluster, which is a 10 millimeter nut with your 30 Torx. And it works better to go ahead and put that on a ratchet to reach up in here. And it's going to be right up here beside the steering column here. And I like to just come over the top and loosen it from up here. Okay. Just be careful so you don't lose your hardware, because you're going to need this stuff for the new unit. And it is a little bit of a tight area to get to. It wouldn't hurt if you wanted to get a magnet to add into your arsenal while you're doing this. Makes things a little bit easier in some instances. And there's two of those bolts. There's one on each side. And we're going to reach up here and feel it. There it is. Okay. Okay. That one's loose as well. All right. You can remove that out of your way. And I'll just kind of take and set it to the side. Just be careful not to damage it. Okay, now that that's out of our way, and I actually pulled this out just a second ago, you got a little clip that goes down in this hole. You can remove that little grommet. You won't need it for the new setup. It goes back in here. Okay, so now that we have that out of the way, we can do a couple things here. We can take loose our tilt mechanism. They've got a little cover over this nut here, so pull off your little plastic cover. You can retain that for later use. And what we're going to be doing is we're going to loosen here, and we also have got the pivot bolts where the column itself comes into the unit. If you want, you can loosen these and get the nut off and then take this loose, or you can take this loose first. It doesn't matter. I like to take this nut loose and then just leave the bolt in there so I can pull it out as needed. So we're going to do that first. And that is our 10 millimeter and our 3 millimeter Allen. So we've got our 3 millimeter Allen come on this side, like so. And oops, make sure your ratchet don't turn on you. And just go ahead and take that loose. Again, save this for later use. It's always good to have a magnetic tray or something for your bolts. Okay, and that should have that where that will actually come out of there. But I don't want to take it out just yet. I'm just getting it loose so that I can pop it out when I'm ready. Okay, there we go. Just kind of turned it. It was stuck in there a little bit on thread. That's fine. All right, so now that we've got that loose, we're ready. We can pull that out when we get these. Once we get these pivot bolts out. Again, I'm taking this whole unit out as an assembly because we are doing a full quick release setup on it, so we will not need the other components. Here you've got 13 millimeter bolts and 13 millimeter wrench to hold on the inside, and we're going to loosen those. You're going to retain all this hardware for use on the new unit that we send you. Okay. All right. Got that one loose. You'll notice it kind of jumped over there when I took that one out. Same thing on this side over here. Okay. And you can kind of reach up in there, get all that. All right, now I'm going to go ahead and wiggle that out, and that drops the steering shock, and pop that bolt out. Okay, now this whole unit is going to come out as an assembly here, which I removed the steering shaft and the tilt mechanism with stock steering wheel on once. Now you can take this and put this up, you know, in your garage or your attic, and save it for later use. Now you take a note how the spline come off. You can see it's at this angle. Well, you can see how the bolt is. That's going to ensure that we put the new one on properly. I'm going to set that to the side. Okay. Now I'm going to grab the shaft that we send with the kit. And you can do this two ways. Some people put the shaft on ours first and then try to put it on the power steering as all one unit. You can do that. What I like to do to ensure that I'm lined up perfect is I like to put the shaft on the power steering unit, and when it's right, it'll go right on there. And as you can see, we got that down on there all the way. And now it allows me to come in with my housing. Now I'll have to start this U-joint on my housing as I'm putting this all in here. Make sure this little set screw on the side here is loose so that this will go on your shaft. And when we get done, we'll tighten all this up. Now you can, if you want to try, you can reach in there and try to start this bolt, but I would wait and do it once we get the wheel on and we start turning it for your OEM U-joint. Okay, so now I'm going to reach over here and I'm going to grab my housing. So you're going to get this from us, and what I'm going to do here is I want to make sure the keyed part of the spline, and this is for the quick release, I want to make sure the keyed part of the spline is at 12 o'clock so that when I put this all on there, my wheels are straight, and you got to make sure your wheels are straight, but my wheels are straight and I can clock everything properly. If by chance you put it all together and you need to, your steering wheel's off a little bit, you can rotate this one spline, which there's 36 splines here, so it moves at 10 degrees each direction, and you can fine tune it from there simply by loosening the bolts, pull it out, move it a notch, and put it back in. But right now I'm going to center that up, okay, and make sure my wheels are straight. They should be straight. We checked that ago, but I'm going to look at the front of the car and make sure that they're straight. And yes, it looks like they're straight. So we're going to go ahead and proceed on. Okay, now our housing is threaded, and the threads are the same as these OEM bolts that we took out. Okay, so what you're going to do, you're going to leave the bushings. There's bushings in here from factory. They're plastic, and they also have an aluminum spacer in there. You're going to utilize the OEM bolt and all that hardware to bolt this up. We're also going to use the nut on ours, but it's a jam nut now. So we're threading through here, and the nut on the backside jams it. Now, you don't get a lot of thread left on these, but you do have enough to jam it. I do recommend putting some Loctite on that when you put it together. Okay, so I'm starting to put this in here, and as you see, as I get close, I'm going to start the shaft on here. And you can look up, tilt up, and get it all lined up. It works good to kind of do it from the bottom. There you go. Now, one thing I really like about the Can-Am is it has a lot of room for the OEM shaft to move up and down. So it lets you pull it to you. Okay, so now that I've got my shaft started, I'm going to simply slip the housing down until I get it in position, and I'm trying to line up my bolts. And one way to do that real easy is look over the top, and you can see through here where that bolt is, and you can get it lined up. There we go, and see it's threading right through beautifully. Okay, I got that one started. I'm going to go ahead and get the other side started. And again, this is the OEM hardware that I'm using here. I'm going to get this one in there, and ours fits tight in there, but it's started right there. You can grab your 13mm ratchet and help you spin that bolt if you can't quite get it started. All right, it's going through there nicely. And you can look down from inside here and see that opening. Okay. Now, I'm not going to tighten this just yet. I'm going to get everything started. I'm just trying to run it up. I get this side ran up. And again, I'm not tightening it. I'm just getting it started. Now, now's a good time to put your OEM nut up in here. Once you've got them started, you can reach from the bottom and do it. And you can get those started on. We'll tighten those down here in just a little bit. On this spot right here is where I'd put Loctite. We're going to be removing this unit in just a little bit, so I'm not going to put Loctite on it, but I do recommend putting Loctite on the jam nut on the inside where you're doing this, as well as Loctite on your set screw. So you're going to want to Loctite the nuts here when you put them on, and your set screw on your U-joint. And it's also, I've got people that also put a little Loctite on the spline of the U-joint. That's completely personal preference. Once you tighten that set screw up, though, it does take the slack out of it. Okay, so we've got this all started. I'm going to run these in a little bit more on both sides. And what this is doing here, this Can-Am setup's pretty cool how this actually works. It's essentially, you really can't over tighten this. I mean, you can if you're going to strip the aluminum. Remember that you're tightening that, but your bushing is just tightening up to the housing, and it's got these pivot pipes basically on here. So you kind of really can't over tighten it. I mean, you don't want to tighten it to strip your aluminum, but it's not like it's going to bind up. So at this point, you can go ahead and snug or jam down your side bolts, and you can do this some more once you get your tilt mechanism hooked up. But okay, I've kind of got my side bolts jammed down. Check this a little bit more. Okay, that's good. And we're going to hook up our tilt mechanism. So you're going to grab your shouldered tilt bolt back. As you can see, it'll go through here and it threads through our housing. And then it'll also give you room to put your OEM nut back on the back side and jam it down. Again, you won't have a full nut on there since we're threading through our housing. So we do recommend putting Loctite on this nut as well. So bring your tilt mechanism up. Before you loosen this, it's good to bring your wheel down a little bit. Our setup, you lose just a tinge of tilt because our housing needs to be thick enough to be strong enough in that area. So if you forget to bring it down, you can stick a screwdriver through here. I recommend like a Phillips, and just put it there. Don't go all the way through the threaded portion of the hole, but just this side, and just push your button, and you can push it down like so here. Excuse me, I pushed it the wrong way. So push your button up with a screwdriver in there and just bring it down like so. These shocks are actually quite stiff, and that'll give you the room you need to get your bolt started. So now I'm going to start my tilt bolt. Just wiggle it, okay, and go ahead and thread that through, and we can tilt it back up in a minute to give us more room. But this is your 3mm Allen. We're going to thread that through like so, and then it'll actually bottom out, and then we'll jam the, just give it a little bit. Now remember, you're going into aluminum, so don't go crazy. And then I'd put a little bit of Loctite on this. We're not going to do it since we're taking this right back off. Put a little bit of blue Loctite on this nut and thread it down on there, and you'll get almost a full nut on it, but not quite. Anyway, he'll thread that back down, and that's your 10mm that you'll tighten back up. So we're going to tighten it. Okay, we're tight. We got right at a full nut, but not quite a full nut. So this, you can also put your cap back on here. That's your decorative cover. Okay, now we've got to tighten our U-joint up, as well as finish tightening our pivot points. Okay, so you're gonna need your 13 millimeter. You can tilt your steering wheel up right now if you want, and you can come under here with your 13 millimeter and do that. We can also put our steering wheel on here to use it to help us turn the U-joint. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to go ahead and sit the steering wheel on here. We can remove it to put all this on there, but I'm just going to sit it on here while I'm messing with that, and then we'll come back at the end and we'll put our dash piece back on. So let me grab the steering wheel. Okay. And your master spline will be at 12 o'clock. So when you put your steering wheel on, it'll all go down. And your steering wheel's locked in. Okay, now we can use this to tighten all of our U-joints up. You're gonna wanna go down here and put your bolt through the OEM U-joint. And you can move this shaft up or down a little bit as need be to get it started. It does move, so if you need to, you can see me moving the shaft up or down. So you've got plenty of room to do so. And get your bolt started. And you can reach up in here and start the nut. The nut goes on the passenger side as the easiest. Bolt comes in through the driver's side. You can get your hand in there and put it on, no problem. Okay, so I've got that started. Now, and that's the easiest way to get to that. One thing, I'm gonna look here. Okay. Now this Can-Am shaft has a lot of movement back and forth, you'll notice. Most of the other shafts, like Polaris and all them, they have a groove for that to go in and it kind of centers it up. So what you want to do for optimum is turn this and try to line up your U-joint pivot as much as you can with the pivot bolt. Just center it up. It don't want to be perfect, but you want to be, you'd rather be that than way off. I mean, it won't hurt anything, but if you want the smoothest operation, line that up as best you can. And you can do that just by looking up from the bottom, and you want to line that pivot point up with your bolts. Okay, once you got that, you can tighten your OEM U-joint down on the bottom. So put your 13 millimeter wrench in and get your 13 millimeter socket and come in from the side over here, the passenger side, and go ahead and get that getting tight. And that is a pinch joint, so you just get it tight and it'll squeeze down on that shaft and get that tight. Okay. Of course, you'll have to get your wrench back off. There we go, got our wrench out. Okay, now, don't forget to tighten the set screw on your upper U-joint. So you're gonna wanna turn it until it exposes it. And I recommend exposing it out the passenger side here. So you can come up through here and put your 3 millimeter, oop, I just about lost it there. Don't let that happen to you. It's a 3 millimeter Allen set screw. And you can put that up in there and get her tightened down. And that'll jam it from this side. I do recommend a little bit of blue Loctite on that as well, and get it tightened down. Okay, and that takes the slack out of our U-joint. All right, now, the last and final thing we got to tighten on the underside here is our jam nuts for our pivot point. So once you get those, just reach up in here with a wrench and tighten those down. Okay. This is a little bit harder to get to. You can tilt it up if you need to. Might make it a little easier on you. But just get that jammed up there like so. Okay. All right, now we're almost there. You can feel the excitement building. Turn your wheel back straight, and we're going to put our dash panel on. So you can go ahead and tilt this down. You're going to take your Torx bolts that you had from the beginning. You're going to remove the nuts. You will not need those. We'll set them to the side. And we're gonna bolt this top piece down. I'm a firm believer in Loctite. I'd put a little bit of blue Loctite on this as well. Line your dash up. On our housing, this is tapped for these bolts. They're kind of a little bit of a pain to get started. Go ahead and get them started. We got 2 of them here. Like I said, I'd put a little bit of blue Loctite on there. Loctite's always your friend when you're dealing with off-road vehicles. And let's go ahead and tighten those bolts down. So now, as you can see, you've got your install done. Your install's complete. You can see we've got the dished wheel. Feels really good. I'm about 5'11". Now, you taller people might want a flat wheel, which would put it, a little bit further away from you, or even a stock wheel. Our wheel is, feels really nice. It's got good ergonomics, especially in this car. I really like the dished wheel. But you've got tilt where you can go down really low. I mean, if you want to, if your seat's down lower, you can get it in that low spot and drive with it down here. Like I said, you lose just a little bit of your up tilt because of our housing thickness, but I mean, you've got plenty of leg room, plenty of clearance. And this OEM wire just kind of tucks into the side here. Hasn't even been a problem. You can still use your full tilt up and down. But as you can see, no power steering. That's all the way to the right. There's back straight. That's all the way to the left. And there's back straight. So you're turning from about 12 o'clock. If you're going right, you're turning from about 12 o'clock to 7 o'clock lock. And if you're going left, you're turning from 12 o'clock back to 5 o'clock. So you're just over a half turn each direction. So you got clicks. There's a quick release in your hand. Make sure it's locked. There it's locked. There's your hand. Feels great. Turns smooth, turns easy. Very nice setup. Like I said, here's your full tilt. Got plenty of leg room. If your seat's in the low position, you can bring it way down here, down low, and have it, really nice too. You'll still be able to adjust your power steering sensitivity for, your liking. Just know a Quickener will always add a little bit more resistance to the driver, but you can adjust that with your dynamic power steering. But this setup being a 1.5 to 1, it's not multiplying the ratio near as much. This vehicle has a faster rack from factory, so a 1.5 to 1 is what we chose to design for this unit. At this time, we're not anticipating making a 2 to 1 because this 1.5 to 1 with this OEM rack pretty much makes the whole setup like a 2 to 1. I mean, it's almost to a T compared to like a Polaris or Yamaha. So get you one.